Welcome to Horticulture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture. I'm used to saying, "What up, friends?" but I only have one friend here today. What's up, Brett?
When are they showing up?
They're all gallivanting or something. I don't know.
No, you said you had one friend here. I was wondering when your friend was going to show up because it's just me and you. Just kidding, bud.
You so mean to me.
Yeah, it's just the two of us, dynamic duo, CCD
What up?
Direction Squad.
CCD. I know. You had the agents last week.
Well, I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. Do you feel, and this may sound like a stupid question, but do you feel like your mental, physical, etc. state is very strongly linked to like the weather?
And
it could be like weather in the seasonal broad sense. It could be more like in the day-to-day sense. Do you feel like and as you think about like compared to people that like there's some, where do you think you fall in that?
I'm probably just over, like, if you've got midline between not affected at all and extremely affected, right? Mm-hmm. I'm a little bit closer, a little past the midline of more affected, because I definitely think if you've, cloudy day and you're not, I'm just kind of tired, and then suddenly the sun comes out, there's kind of a little bit of life brought back to you. Mm-hmm. I do feel that I have changed a little bit of my mindset on seasonality, because winter, used to be kind of dreary and blah, blah, that kind of thing. But now it's like time for rest, and I see that a little bit differently, but overall it does feel more restful. But so, yeah. And I think that's like farming sometimes in general, because there's also like a, pragmatic way to think about it of like, okay, if it's raining, I can't get done the things I needed to get done, or if it's too hot, or, the sun is out, it's not a great time to plant, those sort of things also play in fact. But like emotionally, I do think I'm leaning towards it. Yeah. What about you?
Well, I think I'm very, very sensitive to it, unfortunately. Yeah,
at least you don't live in like Portland, Oregon, then, right?
Well, but it's not in the way that on the seasonal side, it really truly is the opposite. In that, not so much the heat is not. I used to hate the heat. I really like a lot of the heat now in some ways, but it's the really bright, intense. I've talked about this I think in the past, but the really bright, intense period that we're basically in right now, like plus or minus 30 days on the solstice. It takes it out of me big time. And then like recently we've had these like, it'd be super hot, and then a line of storms blows through, and then it's humid, and then it's chill for a minute, and then it's super hot. Like these cycles that have been like riding an emotional roller coaster for me. And I just am feeling tuckered out from it.
I've been taking a lot more naps. I'm not a huge napper necessarily. Like usually I have to be pretty exhausted. And I don't know if it's the heat or, like you said, the change and like the pressure like in my head is changing a lot, and it's just taking it out of me. Like I can fall asleep anywhere.
It's a strange thing, because it's like a lot of living creatures are like humming, they're like, this is the perfect thing. I'm not having to like, like there's bugs everywhere that I can eat, or there's, sunlight everywhere that I can capture and photosynthesize. It's just like, not me though.
Guess it depends, right? Because you're definitely not seeing a ton of, I guess, mammals out and about when it's, hot. They're sleeping during the day too. So
that's true. Shout out to my mammal friends.
Mammals up in here.
Yeah, I mean, I do see a lot of mammals at work, but we're all kind of hanging out.
We're forced to be there. It's not by nature.
See some mammals on Zoom calls and things like that. Well, yeah. So the fact that we have to work, that also sometimes makes me tired. Sometimes it makes me excited. But one of the ways that we tend to do some of our work, like a lot of our colleagues and friends across a wide variety of places, is through these grant funded projects. And some people would be surprised to find out that I, in my role here for 11 years, have been what we call in the biz soft funded. I'm paid off of grants, not through a hard budget item through the university, for that entire period. Still am. I am a, what would you call, a soft funded position working on grants. And this is not going to be all about grants and how
The wild,
good or
wild
bad
west
or
of
whatever they
grants.
are. Um, but I thought we could maybe talk about one grant that Alexis is leading that we currently have that's at the beginning of its in progress phase, and just give you a sense of how we think about and approach doing the kind of work that we're doing. And it'll also give you a little bit of a sneak peek at some of the stuff that's coming down the pike, as well as listen in for some opportunities that you may have either as a TA person, a technical assistance person, or as a grower or somebody who grows flowers in particular, to participate in helping us build some data sets that growers can use for their uh, improving their business and improving their decision making and everything else. So
Yeah.
I thought maybe we would start. So I want to start with the problem, and I don't mean the problem in the sense of like how we framed it for the grant, but like what is the issue that you, Alexis, and I to a secondary degree saw that prompted this whole thing to happen?
Yeah, I think uh, this was, Brett, you've been doing grants for a long time. So this is my first grant. So coming at this sort of from a fresh perspective on that. But, an extension in this, I think, especially in the CCD, what we do well is we listen to problems that people have. We try to be proactive and responsive, right, at the same time. And so when we thought about this grant, it was sort of, a little bit of mix of both of those. And so what we were looking at was specialty crops and issues that they have surrounding risk management. This grant is a risk management, but more specifically, sort of this idea of crop insurance and how pricing goes into that, and understanding crop insurance, how lenders understand the the crop, the farm, production to then give crop insurance or lend money or any of something along those lines, and there being just sort of this lack of understanding all the way around, whether it was like growers not knowing what they needed to provide, or your lenders and these insurance folks not understanding the crop, and just everything in between. And so we deal with specialty crops, but we kind of specifically for this grant we're looking a little bit more of cut flowers, at least in the lines of price collection, because those of you who know the CCD, we've been doing price collection for farmers markets for a wide variety of stuff, but it's of course at farmers markets predominantly veg and fruit, focused, edible crops. And so we don't have a lot of information on how much do marigolds or lisianthus or sunflowers sell for. And so when we had lenders who legitimately email or call us saying, "Can you help me help this farmer? I don't know how much, a 100-foot row of dahlias should, you know, give throughout the season, right? Like how many flowers, how much are those worth? What are the markets?" We didn't have actual data to back that up. And so we were like, how do we find that? How do we figure that out?
Yeah, and I think that we spend so much time in this space that sometimes it's even, we don't necessarily realize even the level of description that might be helpful. So in
Mm-hmm.
the world of crop insurance, for example, the predominant way that crop insurance is used is to insure large commodity
Yeah.
products that are sold and bought and sold through commodity marketplaces. And there's just a different way that those markets work, and there's an easier way to evaluate
Find
the
info.
value of them, and also there's a established process where people report their acreages and those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
People are just used to it. It's like normal part of the system. It's
Yeah.
like sort of like if you grew up going to the dentist and the doctor, you just keep going because it's like that's just a
Right.
normal thing. But
Every 6 months.
if you didn't, or that wasn't something that was available to you or whatever, then you don't really necessarily do that. And the other piece of the puzzle that you kind of mentioned, which I think is really interesting, is there are these folks who are working in the world of crop insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And just to be clear, so crop insurance, generally speaking, is money you pay to have a policy in place just in case something bad happens to your crop, that you don't lose the entire amount of its
Right.
value.
Right.
It's different from liability insurance for your farm. Like, for instance, if you either if a product you have makes somebody sick, or if they
Mm-hmm.
come on your farm and hurt themselves, or whatever, any number of different liabilities that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing with the crop insurance in particular is in addition to farmers from commodity systems are used to doing it and we aren't necessarily as used to it, it also presents this really quirky farming system that people aren't as used to working in, agents aren't as used to
Mhm.
working in, and also our resources aren't as up, that there's not a FSA crop report for
Right.
zinnias in
Yeah.
the same way
And
that
there's
there
some
is for.
language barrier from I'm starting to learn what we call one thing, and even the state of Kentucky, what we view as, and I'll get way too deep into this, so Brett will pull me back, but it's thinking about what is drip irrigation look like. Well, what FSA considers drip irrigation is not what the standard Kentucky farmer or even like us technical professionals think of that, and so it's like there's this language barrier even to getting to that point.
Yeah, irrigated acres versus not, that all that kind
Mhm.
of fun stuff, and we'll at some point down the pike we'll pull in some people who
Mhm.
work more directly in this world, and we're as we're figuring stuff out. But so that to me starts with like, okay, this is a problem. Which, if I
Right.
had to state it really succinctly, it would be that specialty crops and specialty cut flower producers often have a hard time in one way or another getting access to insurance products and sometimes to
Right.
fund it, to loans.
Hmm.
One of the main reasons for that is a lack of good information. Another reason for that is sometimes they're not prepared in one way or another.
Hmm.
Sometimes the agent isn't prepared, and sometimes the producer isn't prepared.
Yeah.
So that's not, that's my job. I sort of show up and tell everybody what the problem is, then I leave.
And then he gets out.
I just go and play pool for the rest of the day. Um, No, so that's our problem. So what Alexis and the rest of the team working with her has done is to prepare a proposal for a grant that aims to figure this out. And so, who did you apply to? And maybe we can just jump into some of the pieces that we're trying to put together for this.
Yeah, we applied for the Southern Extension Risk Management Education grant, and the SERME, as we fondly call it, around the CCD grant. And so that one is a grant that is it's a federal grant that goes through the University of Arkansas. So shout out to them and all their answering all of my emails. And we'll have some of those folks on actually here in another month or so. But answering all my emails about a first time grant writer and not knowing what the heck I am doing other than I'm going to try my best. um, so we received that grant funding, and that cycle started in April, and it's an 18-month grant. So we will finish it up September of 2027. Yeah, but it was an interesting process as your first time, and we were kind of coming off some crazy times at the CCD with field days and events, and we were like, oh, we gotta write this grant. We're gonna write this.
Yeah. Well,
We
that and
thought it
that
was
that's that. Before we jump into the specifics of the kind of what we're hoping to deliver, I think the other thing, just for people who aren't as familiar with this and haven't heard of it, that
mm-hmm.
heard of these things, there's this weird lag time that happens where you're
Yeah,
you're preparing ideas last fall and this is actually a pretty short. This is a pretty
yeah,
good short
short.
timeline of
Mm-hmm.
between applying and getting the money, but you apply for this money and then 6 months down the road, even a year down the road, then you're going to actually do the thing. And so if you have an idea that you want to implement and it's going to require a grant, then you're probably at least 6 months to a year away from even being able to implement it, if you even get the grant in the first place. So
Yeah.
anyway, you all didn't come here to listen about grant logistics. What we do want to tell you about though is some of the stuff that we're going to be doing with the grant.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, we a big part of this is sort of investigation into the problem, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. So investigation and collection of data so that we have information to then give back to these people who are trying, like we said, trying to make loans and stuff like that. So one big piece of it that I'm really excited about, that I think is gonna has a lot of potential for a lot of different things, is the um, price collection info. So like we've said, we at the CCD we collect farmers market and auction prices. The University of Kentucky also has helped facilitate, starting I don't know how many years ago, 20 at least years ago, started collecting pricing information from commercial orchards. And the reason behind that, and why I think this is important to bring up, is because The USDA, and Brett, correct me, he's a lot more knowledgeable in a lot of these areas, but I can look up general pricing for apples that are coming out of Michigan, right? And Michigan can produce apples at a much lower cost, and they can sell them for a much lower cost than we can in Kentucky. And they're also selling to different markets, right? So Michigan might be selling to predominantly wholesale markets. You're buying their apples at Kroger, and you can buy them at a low cost versus a lot of our Kentucky growers, right? They're doing agritourism and they may be doing direct to consumer, going to the farmers market, higher value on those apples. So what UK has been doing with them for many years is collecting that price data for Kentucky people and having that available to lenders and crop insurers to say, no, no, that gala apple that is being grown in Kentucky is actually worth, and we have reports saying and grower information saying, no, it's actually worth this much, and this is why, if their apples get destroyed by a frost, for the year, this is what they would have had an income versus Michigan, which could be half or a third of the price in comparison because the markets are different. So what we wanted to do is something similar with Kentucky. So we're growing maybe different things, first of all, that aren't huge in the floral trade. So that's one aspect of this is that not everything Kentucky grows is even price data is even available for it. But also, again, we're mostly selling direct to consumer, maybe direct to florists, but there's no middleman. There's no usually big um, wholesaler in between that's dealing with this. And we're, bouquets, and there's different market values there. So what we wanted to do was sort of think of the 10 most popular crops across the state throughout the seasons and collect this price data to have it available. So that one I'm
Yeah,
really excited
and we're we applied to and received funding for the Southern Extension Risk Management Education Center, and so really I mean one of the defining core to me themes within agriculture is risk, because you
about.
put seeds out and you don't know if they're going to germinate or grow
Mm-hmm.
well. You don't know if the weather's going to be good. You don't know
Yeah.
sometimes if where the market's going to go. You don't know if your employees are going to show up to work. You don't know if you're going to be sick or get
Right.
hurt. You don't know if yada yada. I mean, there's so many things that you don't know. It's like it's ironic that so many farmers I come across can have control freak tendencies when there is so little that's. I mean, maybe it's they just are trying to control anything that they can because everything is literally out of their control. So it's all risk. It's all risk, baby.
Yeah.
Um, but and so that's kind of how we're framing some of the price stuff.
Mhm.
But it's also what we did some research last year, and yeah, last year, and found that people are using these local price data sources for a whole bunch of different reasons.
Mhm.
So they use them, yes, for potentially having conversations about insurance or about loans. They use them obviously for setting their prices. They use it as
Mhm.
I would never recommend that someone look at it and say this is going to be my price, but it
Right.
does give
Right.
you a sense of what the going rate is in the state. And I think also people use it for broader business decisions, which crops to grow, which crops not to
Mhm.
grow. I mean, there's a whole bunch of multiplier effects that come from that pricing information being available. One of them is it gives a lender or a insurer some picture of, okay, this is kind of from a validated university source that's going to take
Yes.
take care to make it right. This is kind of the ballpark of what we're looking at. Because if you're talking about a product that the wholesale rate for it is 10 cents a stem and you
Mhm.
sell it for $1.50 a stem, being reimbursed at the wholesale rate isn't really necessarily going to help you a whole lot,
Right.
relative to what you're doing. So it's this. There's going to be this really interesting conversation that's going to have to happen between us, producers, the insurers. I think that's kind of at the core
Mhm.
of this project. But I think that the price data, USDA does a really good job at the national level. And they're the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they're good at monitoring those larger systems. And to me,
Mhm.
it's up to people, land grants and others in the states to be part of their job is to help support those local. Uh,
Mhm.
I call them in nerd terms market intelligence systems, which is to say information about markets, market reports, that kind of thing. And so that's part of it. What else? We're going to do some other stuff for too, right?
Yeah, so there's that whole aspect of it, but then we're well aware that we deal in specialty crops and a lot of what we would be dealing with for cut flowers as far as how do we train growers to keep the correct records, how do we train the lenders to understand what questions to ask, how do we train the agents to guide our people towards the right lenders or people who are interested. And so we are developing training. It'll be applicable to pretty much all specialty crops because they're in a lot of ways. Someone growing cut flowers is going to face the same challenges and confusing questions that someone who's growing cherry tomatoes will, because in Kentucky we're dealing with most farmers are dealing with row spacing that's different than a commodity crop, right? I might have one row of Lysianthus or one row of cherry tomatoes. I'm not doing an acre of each of those. It's a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more difficult. So a lot of this sort of, I talked about this language barrier. I'm actually really excited to write kind of like a fact sheet on just, this is what they call it, this is what they mean sort of information, just to kind of break down some of those. So those will be available and applicable to all of our specialty crop farmers. And my goal here is also to guide people towards what is best for them. So there is sort of this idea of like private, what I refer to as sort of private insurance. And so there, these insurance companies that some of them do some types of crop insurance, and maybe they only cover things in your high tunnel or only things in that are in containers or raised beds. So if you're doing mum production, or something along those lines, or have a greenhouse, tulips in crates would count versus traditional through farm service agency lender insurance might only cover stuff outside of the tunnel, which is something very different, right? And if you're not growing a bunch of stuff outside of the tunnel, then that's not a route for you. But also looking at the economics of that. So it is insurance, you are paying for it. And so if you're doing this through, federal insurance ways, it's not that expensive. In the grand scheme of things, that is, it's not that expensive, but that doesn't mean you really need to pay that $300. So just sort of guiding people towards, does this make sense for me? And if yes, I definitely want to insure my crop in some way. Which route is right? And so there's a bunch of different federal programs. I say a bunch. There's three, but they're all confusing. I'm still confused, and they gave me money to figure out how to not make it confusing. um, and so my hope is almost like to just have this guiding questions that'll say, okay, if you answered A for this question, move on here, and then by the end, you'll know which one is most likely going to be the best option for you before you ever leave your house and go somewhere. And then the next step would be, okay, you got to this point, you know which lender or which place you want to get your insurance through. What are the questions that need to be asked? What do you need to be prepared to bring with you? What type of reports are you doing? So that's kind of the big thing. And all of that sounds like scary. And I know it sounds scary to me, again, as somebody who's going to do it, a little bit scary every time I think about it. But our goal is to make it as relaxed and chill, and that you feel confident when you walk in or that you're talking to someone about what you need for your farm. And that you're speaking the same language is I'm
Mm-hmm.
finding more and more as we do sort of these interviews with people within this world that we're trying to understand, that there is a language barrier, and it's wild to me, and I keep bringing that up, but because it was not something I expected for sure.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I've perceived in this, it's not just in insurance, but insurance is a good example, is that it is with the public ones, the ones that are
Hmm.
available through FSA and that are available basically through there's federal programs that support
Hmm.
this. You have this federal thing, and then you have the state level, and then you have
Hmm.
this local level,
Yeah.
spread throughout the state. It's the same way with extension, it's the same with any number of things, where the way that things play out sometimes at the local level can feel kind of variable, or you'll have somebody at the
Hmm.
local level with a variable amount of experience and they don't really sure. And it's, imagine you work at the store and somebody comes in and they ask for a really obscure item that you don't, nobody ever asks for. Well, if you haven't worked there for a while or you haven't looked into it or received training, you aren't even going to know where that product is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what some of these crop insurance programs are
Hmm.
for these, the people who are writing the policies, is they're as of right now, they feel like an obscure product.
Hmm.
But the reality, I think, part of that is that the fact that it's treated like an obscure product that people don't know about creates this assumption that there isn't a product there that specialty crop growers can't use, and so fewer
Yes.
clients of that type come in to ask for the product, and so it feels like a really. And you talk about specialty cut flowers. Somebody who maybe has more of a what I would call what other people would call quote traditional agriculture. I personally think traditional agriculture is a shattered mosaic of a lot of different practices, most of
Yeah.
which don't require large pieces of equipment. But um, somebody from a commodity system of agriculture might hear cut flowers and think, oh, precious, cute,
Hmm.
whatever. Like, oh, that's
Hmm.
kind of a fringe thing. But I'll go back to Alexis with some of the stats about the growth of that industry in Kentucky and how it's impactful. But the thing that I always come back with is the idea of like returns per acre and the actual money that you're getting back, and also the amount that you're not having to shell out in terms of borrowing on the front
Hmm.
end of it because of how intensive those systems are. My point with this is Kentucky cut flowers, for instance, the specialty crop industry has grown. If you've heard all kinds of things about how challenging agriculture is right now, it is. For a lot of people, it's
Facts.
very, very challenging. I mean, it's a hard time. But I think I've heard Warren Beeler and others say that horticulture really is a bright spot
Hmm.
in Kentucky agriculture right now. There's a lot of good things that are happening with horticulture, and part of that is the growth of these groups. And if we want to see things continue to grow, we need these systems to support them. So,
Right.
Alexis, can you? I know this is a stat you probably have tattooed on your eyelids at this point, but like the tremendous growth we've seen in specialty cut flowers in Kentucky from the 2017 to 2022. Hopefully, we'll have more census data coming up. What was that? What's the
Yeah.
deal with that?
The difference was, well, we doubled the amount of farms, or more than doubled the amount of farms. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we went from 30 to 60, 30, 60-ish range to over 200, and then we went from basically the census didn't even report the cash receipts because they were so low to $2 million,
Yeah.
which we are pretty confident isn't it even close to kind of hitting the mark, just because a lot of those people were not reporting because they didn't consider themselves commercial farms, even though they are. Um,
Yeah.
but they didn't necessarily know that it applied to them. So yeah, I mean, seeing that growth from non-reportable numbers because they're so small to 2 million across the state is huge, and it's depends what you're comparing it to, but I think it speaks for itself.
And that's why when I made my seemingly maybe a little bit prickly comment about traditional agriculture and the way that sometimes horticulture is viewed as a second or a
Hmm.
also ran kind of commodity, is that I think if you're not necessarily feeling like you're receiving support and you don't conceptualize yourself as being part of agriculture, and then you don't participate in the systems of data collection, whether that be a census, whether that be our
Hmm.
project, whether it be any of these, you don't get counted. And then when
Hmm.
it comes time to reestablish what the priorities are for the next
Yeah.
round of a farm bill or the next round of a funding cycle for whatever, you weren't counted. And since you weren't counted, you don't get represented. And since you don't get represented, you
Hmm.
don't get resources. Then you don't consider yourself a farmer. So you don't report. It's this vicious cycle that we've
Yeah.
been in for like 30 or 40 years now,
Hmm.
in Kentucky and elsewhere too, where we're trying to, I don't know, bring back a little swag in the horticulture industry. Like you may not have a lot of acreages, but
Hmm.
a lot of acreage, but it's not about the number of acreage, it's what you do
What
with
you
it,
do with it.
right? It's not the motion of the wheat in the fields. It's or no wait, I've
You
lost the plot
lost
on
it.
it.
It's okay. It's okay. But it is something that I think a lot of people didn't know, and I really didn't know until fairly recently that there's no longer, and we've said this before, but just a reminder, like there's no longer this 10-acre minimum, which I think used to be like you consider yourself a farm and you could have a farm number, which meant you could then report a lot of these numbers we're talking about and report to the census, but only if you had 10 acres. That is no longer the case. It's not even an acreage. I was talking to one of the state FSA folks, Angela Watson, who's wonderful, and she was saying, I think in Louisville they've got like a farm number for, I want to say it was like a tenth of an acre, if that. I mean, it's just a backyard basically, but they have a farm number because they have cash receipts and they have, proven that they're selling at least $1,000 worth of product, and so then they can get counted in those numbers, whatever that they're growing, and they have an opportunity to sort of, you know, in a way, show up for the Kentucky community. And that's what you do when you report those numbers, is not only are you helping yourself down the line, but thinking of it as the agriculture community and the horticulture community is more than just you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just to give you a sense, and this is again a lot of this. I think we're at the university. A lot of what we're supposed to be doing is about good information, good
Hmm.
conversations, linking people, and also doing research just to be able
Yeah.
to figure this stuff out. So this is a really cool project for that. But not to just to get off my high horse or stay on my high horse for just one more minute. Like for example, filling out the ag census that is requested, the way that those things are filled out, the data that are in there determine
Hmm.
farm bill programs. It determines things like how and where AFRI, this is the Agriculture, Food, and Research Initiative, which is one of the major research initiatives, is prioritized. Rural development. For us, the specialty crop block grant for us in the
Hmm.
horticulture community, many producers have applied for those to get a piece of
Yeah,
equipment or
it's not
whatever.
just university money; it's direct farm
And
money.
I just think that sometimes it's like, oh, we want a good picture of the data so that the nerds can put it in their spreadsheets and
The
crunch
nerds
it.
can nerd.
And that is cool. Don't get me wrong. I do enjoy that. But it really, like, it's
There's a
not the
tangible thing
only
connected.
political activity that is important for you to do as a producer, but it is a very important, boring, but also easy activity.
Hmm.
So as you see things come and see people asking for data, especially if it's coming from USDA, think of it as an
Or the
opportunity,
CCD.
or the CCD. Think of it as an opportunity for you to be saying like, we want a piece of the public support that goes to agriculture. Again, it's not a perfect solution. People who are familiar with this
Right.
will know there's lots of other layers that I'm not going to get into. But back to the project though.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that a big piece of this would be getting perspectives from people about how these programs do or don't work for
Hmm.
them, things that they're missing, things that have based on the previous conversations. Is that part of like what's going on with this?
Yeah, and Brett's asking these leading questions as if he's not on this grant, knows exactly what they are. So bless him for that and leading me into this.
Bless
But
me.
yes, we talked.
Bless me.
Bless him. So we talked about we are collecting this price data, how that we're kind of going to use that and help people with that. But from back to this idea of talking the same language, what are the issues that need to be brought up? How do we direct people? We're doing interviews with lenders, with private insurance, as well as with growers. So we have a grower survey, just asking basic questions like, "Have you ever had crop insurance? If so, what kind? Was it through these sort of public federal ones, or was it private?" Um, a little bit more description on crop insurance, because again, when I hear that, I tend to think commodity crops and something not applicable to me, but it is. And so, we've got some grower surveys. Again, we're kind of focusing a little bit more in the flowers from that actual survey info, but we will, and but what we learn from that will be applicable to all of our specialty crop growers. But it's, we kind of we there's not enough money or time to do all of it in one grant. So we kind of had to pick one route, and that was one that was easy to show growth and need in. So one of the reasons we went there. But yeah, so doing some info and just asking these lenders, like, what info, number one, do you need that we can hopefully provide, but also what do you want the growers or the applicants coming in to know? And then in vice versa, what do these growers really need these lenders to understand? Maybe it's just something like, my row spacing, I'm spacing things 4 inches apart. Like, that's very different than even tomatoes or cucumbers, right? And how many plants, when I say I'm gonna fit 400 plants in 10 feet of row space, that is mind boggling to somebody who works in acres, versus 10
Mm-hmm.
feet of row space, and how much money I can make off of 10 feet of row space, as an example. So just sort of understanding that, number one, that is possible, um, and but also, again, talking the same language and having everybody feel like they're prepared if that conversation arises.
Yeah, I think that for me, because I I kind of perceive personally a lot of the people who are involved in this actually have really good intentions, which
Totally.
is good.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you get in situations and you're like, I think that
People are like,
maybe
I don't care. I don't want to
somebody
fix
here
it.
is a bad person. um, but I think that there's some uh, lack of clarity and standardization on these more niche, particular, peculiar things like what we're doing. But the reality is, there's a lot of people who are maybe coming from non-traditional ag backgrounds, first-time farmers. Maybe they're taking over land that was in a different system and they're trying to explore something new. We have a lot of producers like that, where maybe they
Hmm.
did beef cattle or they did row crops for a long time and they're trying to diversify into something else, and they're used to being able to go for that commodity thing and
Yeah.
get this
If the
insurance,
answer
and
is
they go
easy,
and
it's right
it's
there.
kind of
Yeah.
like, what do you mean? um, and so these are human systems. They are flawed. There's problems with them. There's politics. Everything is, there's a
Hmm.
reality to it. But I do think there is a good opportunity for some clarification, so that if there are policy level things that need to change in the future, we can at least know that we have a good sense of what the situation is and how and
Yeah.
where the confusion is causing the problem, rather than the policy
Yeah.
itself.
I really feel like a lot of this grant is just the investigating, of just figuring out what we don't know, like what, and not necessarily just us, but like what the lenders don't know, what the growers don't know, what all these different groups that have to work together in some way don't know. And, we're doing this specifically for Kentucky, but again, in theory, a lot of this is applicable, at least from like a federal, or public standpoint. So if you're outside of Kentucky, hopefully this will also help you. But um, yeah, just really trying to use our knowledge and our resources and our platform through extension, through CCD, to really share that out a little bit more widely than it is. Because I will say, like, there are resources. Like, if you go look up micro farm USDA program, like, they have a fact sheet on it. But I found it confusing and a little bit hard to understand from with my grower hat on. Even that, and what is applicable, how is that different from Kentucky? Again, just the differences on what they consider irrigated versus non-irrigated. Very different for our Kentucky folks and a lot of our small farms.
Mm.
So we're just, I think we're just doing a lot of investigating, collecting of that info so that we have it available to share with folks. And I am learning a lot. I said to Brett when they told us they were giving us this grant, I was like, honestly, I'm surprised because I felt like it was very obvious I don't know anything, but maybe that was the point. Was they were like, she wants to know things, so we'll give her money to figure it out and share what she learned.
I was a little unnerved because Alexis stopped being cocky for a minute. Normally it's
This is so out of my realm.
yeah.
But and to the point of we thought it was very important that really to kind of set this was definitely outside of my normal box of
Mhm.
comfort and where I can think I can help, but I knew it was needed because no one knows what's going on. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna try
Well,
and
and
fix
I mean,
that.
I think that the name of the proposal is something like real problems in
Hmm.
crop insurance for specialty crops and cut flowers.
Yeah,
And
let me see. It's right here. It's real problems in risk management for specialty crops and cut flowers.
yeah, I was
Yeah,
pretty close. Pretty close. And I
you
think
are on the
that, like,
right spot.
starting from a place of like, what's the real problem? What's the actual issue here? Is That's something we've tried to do in a lot of the programs we
Yeah.
offer. And I mean, other people do it too. It's not unique to us, but
It
it
feels
always
like we're
helps
the best
me.
at
It
it.
always helps me to like reground on like, oh yeah, this is the thing that we're doing that's going to help. It's not
Mhm.
I'm going to force this program and it's going to exist and maybe be
Yeah, I'm
useful.
just
And
doing it because there's money and I can get it. Like
yeah,
that's
sometimes you have to do that, and it's that's the
well, when
reality.
you're
It is what
soft,
it
when we
is.
have fully soft funded positions, yeah, that's part
Yeah.
of sometimes the name of the game. But
Well, so I just want
yes,
to briefly make a joke that I wasn't able to
okay,
shoehorn in during back when it
bring
was
it.
happening. But when you said talking about micro farms,
Uh
I
huh.
was going to say, what is this? A farm for ants? Um, which is really Zoolander for those born, in the 2000s. Uh,
Millennials out there gotta laugh. Thank you for that.
thank you. But I guess if you were looking forward, maybe this project is done, it's gone according to
Mhm.
plan. What are like to you? What are some of the good simple or complex outcomes that might come out of this?
I guess I hope that we get less lenders, whether it's lenders for a loan or lenders for insurance, and confused, like they know where to find that info, and that info is useful for them. And so I don't want to say like we hear from them less, but I mean, in a way, if we hear from them less, then that means we might have done our job. And then I hope that there are more growers around the state reporting their numbers, because you've got to report those numbers to be eligible for these federal programs, but then taking advantage of these programs. And it's easy. Like I'm hoping that that word spreads, and that you have a farmer that goes in and was like, actually, I had this checklist, which I hope to provide, that said I needed to bring this, and I brought it in, and I told them this is what I wanted, and I gave them the stuff, and then I left within 30 minutes or whatever that short amount of time is, and then it's done and completed, and so that we have more people taking advantage of these programs, and then our numbers are going to go up because they're reporting more, they're using the programs. And then long term we get more money to focus on those things, and whether it's for cut flowers or just our specialty crops, because I've heard a farmer say before, this isn't cut flowers, but for an example, reported, I think I want to say it's lettuce, or no, it might be cabbage. According to the census, what the federal government thinks is that Kentucky only grows like 2 acres of cabbage. It's either cabbage or lettuce, which is 100% untrue. And Brett and I could probably both name multiple farms that grow in the state of Kentucky more than 2 acres just on that one farm, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, there's all this grant money that could be available for rural development, for maybe for some SNAP funding if they thought Kentucky grew vegetables,
Right.
but they don't think Kentucky grows a bunch of leafy vegetables. And so that's the type of thing that I'm hoping we can overcome and make things easier for folks.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, I mean, listen, shoot for the moon, right? And just land among the stars. Isn't
Those
that the
all
saying?
sounded like, I mean, if you had said universal achievement of
Every single farmer will have crop
will
insurance.
have viable crop insurance that they feel good about, and that'd be one thing. But I do think, again, and it could very well be we get to the bottom of this and we realize that there are some major policy based
Hmm.
things, and those policy based things might be accidental, they may
Hmm.
be intentional. There's like that's the thing
Yeah,
about
but we'll
like
know. We'll at least know.
politics and power and all
Well,
those things, the lowercase p, lowercase politics, lowercase power, it's part of the system, and it's part of what we
Mhm.
deal with in agriculture. And so being able to have some good information to
Mhm.
act on, I
For
have this
sure.
feeling like there's a lot of the problems are caused by just well-meaning people who aren't able to focus on learning a thing, and it's not been presented to them really simply and
Yeah.
straightforwardly.
Yeah.
That maybe that could cure a lot of ills, but I guess we'll see.
I'm a positive thinker in that line, Brett, too. It's like if I can just give you the information in a way you can digest, then we'll all be on the same page, right? Like that's how we'll all agree, right? That's what that means.
Probably not. But we'll at least be closer to clarity,
Yeah.
and people
Yeah.
who,
And I hope like one of my big ones is that so not every what I have learned so far in this first quarter of the grant, because we're just April through now, getting through it, is that it's not even often available. So even if I had all the right things, I did all the right reporting that I needed to do, I still might not be able to find someone willing to lend me the insure to give me the insurance
yeah,
policy. Like I can do everything right, and then still have to go across the state via phone or in person to find someone who might be willing to work with me. So I'm hoping one of my other objectives here is that there will be more people comfortable, more lenders comfortable to give those policies across the state, and there's more options for folks, because there's like three right now who are known for doing things for specialty crops. And even then, sometimes they want to do it and the underwriter says no because they don't have
yeah,
enough data to back it up. And I'm like, what is happening? What is happening?
yeah.
It's like rage bait for me. I'm like, what do you mean this is a federal program?
But if we got the data,
But
and we are able
they
to,
need more info. So that's what we're here
yeah,
for.
yeah. Well, cool. This is a little bit different type of episode, but I
Yes.
wanted to talk through the program because, and two for two reasons. One, there will be some data collection efforts coming out
Mm-hmm.
to collect prices, to collect feedback about
Your
your
experience.
experiences with crop insurance or lack thereof. If you're an insurer, an insurer, I'll be conducting some interviews with folks just to kind of get their perspectives on this situation. And so that's one thing. Look out for
Yes.
those pings, but
Please answer
also
them.
we'll have some more episodes coming up with some other people. People for who is it?
We've got
Angela.
Eston Williams
Hmm.
is in a program called the Navigators. So he focuses on Kentucky, Tennessee, maybe one other state in this area. He's with the University of Arkansas, but focuses on our area. And his whole job is to help small farmers to take advantage of these federal programs. So he is an expert in understanding the difference between them, and I am so excited to learn more from him. He's seems like quite a character. I met him at a conference, but we have him scheduled for an August episode. So if you've been interested in those, but you don't know anything about them, that will be the one to definitely listen to.
Cool. And I think we might have one or two others, but TBD
Mhm.
on who or
Maybe some
when.
farmer. I'm trying to get some farmers. So if you are a farmer, whether it's cut flowers or just a specialty crop, even who has done some of these insurance programs, we would love to hear from you and just sort of your struggles, just your experience with it. If it's been valuable to you, we'd love to have you on the pod. Or if you don't want to be on the pod and you just want to chat with us, that's great too. But yes, so and if you have specific questions, this is as we sort of wrap up here, I would say if you as a grower or a lender or someone out there who maybe has specific questions you'd like to know, um, send those in to us. Either send them via our email, which is in the description, or you can when you leave us a good review, you can put it in there, or you can send it to us on Instagram at Horticulture Podcast. Send us your questions and we will try to ask them of these people specifically on the episode. I think would be really fun to do some of those. So if you've got them, please send them in and we will make sure we get them answered. Hopefully, I will say live, but on a recording so you can hear your question if you like. But I think that would be fun. Anything
Yeah.
else? No. Cool. Well, hopefully you all are excited. We're excited. Like I said, this is a
As
different
excited as one
episode
can be about
about
grants
yeah,
and
about
crop
insurance,
insurance.
about the
I feel like if
positivities that
anybody
it comes
could breathe the spark into it, it's us.
in. Yes, well, and listen to that episode with Eston because, like I said, he seems really fun. So I think he's going to be a great guest. But again, shoot us an email if you've got questions or thoughts on episodes you'd like to hear about in the plant-esque world. Let us know what you want to know because we're just coming up with this as we see. It sounds good, but we appreciate you guys being here with us today, and we hope you'll join us next time. See ya.